disappears, right? You see what I'm saying? Because like the other lines going, and maybe if we did some lines doing that and doing that, and it's like, it starts to be kind of like, wait, was there a triangle there at all? I'm not sure. Because it really hinges on having, like, every piece of information that contradicts the triangle really starts to overpower that. Whereas I could do a bunch of lines going through here, and we still see the triangle, right? The rule is more dominant. The illusion is more dominant, right? It's a stronger implied shape. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. All right, so next, how do we create value with lines? We've pretty much kind of covered it, or at least covered part of it. And probably the first thing to think about is, how do you create value just with one line versus what are ways to create value when you're allowed to use multiple lines? Did you watch this, Tom?
Yeah, I did.
Saucy watch. All right. Come on. Come on, think.
By the width of your mark.
Good. All right. So there's a difference in value between a mark that's like thin like that and a mark that's thick like that. And we can also, on any one individual mark, we can have a difference of, right? Like it can go from thick to thin, right? So we can say line width. And this is kind of part of a larger topic which we could call line weight. Right? Like line weight as a word in art, it tends to mean two different things, right? That are very related to each other. And one, on the literal sense, when we say line weight, we mean literally how hard was that person pressing, right? The amount of pressure they put on that mark. And then, in a less literal sense, we mean the difference of how light or dark that mark is. And that could be partially just in terms of the thickness of the mark. So, like, if you had a drawing and you're doing the drawing partially in ballpoint, partially in a fine point Sharpie, and partially in a fat Sharpie, right? There's going to be a difference in the thickness of mark just in the change of tools. It's not literally a change of line weight in that you're not literally changing your pressure, but it is line weight in the sense that the mark is different in width. But what about, there's the other issue, right? Which is, I mean, not that we're drawing in color right now, but like, we talked about this before when we were talking about mark making, right? Like the difference between your pencil and your pens, right? That not everything makes the same darkness in the mark that they make, right? A pencil is automatically a lighter value. Or if we all went out and not only bought a lot of different pens, remember you do need to buy some drawing pens, everyone needs to have at least a 01, right now, a point, yeah, I think it's a 0.1 and a 0.005. There we go, 0.1 and a 0.005. Everyone needs to have 2 drawing pens, at least. Normally you can get them in a pack of like 4. But let's say we all went out, we also got gray drawing pens of various different values, right? Then each mark we put down could be a light gray or a medium gray or a black, right? So we could change the line weight just that way by the color of the ink that we're drawing. That make sense? Okay. So we could just say, we'll just say ink value for now to represent that idea. But it could also include the difference between graphite versus, you know, a different kind of charcoal versus a pen. Okay. What else? Anything else about having to do with line weight? Right. And then with some tools like a pencil, how hard you press can also, so we can talk about pressure. That can make a difference. All right. Now, what about other ways that don't have to do with the lines themselves changing, right? Or to think of it another way, What are ways to create more value by using multiple lines?
Putting like a bunch of lines close together.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a spacing issue, right? I mean, like literally, when I was drawing these implied triangles, right? I mean, this is technically a pattern. And so visually, we see it partially because it's an area of a lot of activity, right? A lot of patterning. But we also see it because this whole area is darker than this area. But we could play with it some more. Let's make two triangles. Right? Does everyone see how this is darker than that? Right? And then we could do it some more. A smaller triangle. So now we have three triangles there, each one a slightly different value from the next, right? Just by layering the different kind of mark making system. Right, does that make sense? So we're all clear on that? Okay. All right, well that pretty much covers what was covered on that video. But make sure to go back and watch it because it'll help refresh all this stuff in your mind. Because you're gonna need to know it in order to be able to complete and do all the work for Unit 2. Now, there's something else that wasn't covered in that lecture, and that is, how do we create rhythm with lines? You're looking at me like with I have no idea. Okay.
Music.
Like music, right? Like let's say, right? Well, one of the assignments, right, is to create with lines a representation of a piece of music, right? So let's say right now in class, I said, I want you all to imagine the melody of a piece of music that you like, and then to draw a line that kind of represents the rhythm of that melody. What would be some things you could do?
Make like a pattern that kind of goes.
Right, okay. Yeah. Like any kind of pattern, right? Like let's for a while put lines aside and just think about shapes, right? If I did this, triangle, triangle, square, circle, triangle, triangle, square, circle, right? It's kind of like a literal representation of a pattern. It's kind of boring. It's like saying that like someone writing A, B, B, A, B represents a rhyme scheme. Well, yeah, it does, but like, it doesn't have any of the fun of the actual rhyme scheme, right? Okay, it's just a very abstract. But we could do the same thing and not only have a different symbol, but we